The judge dropped his pen, and Camron leaned back in the corner, arms crossed, as if he already knew what she would say. They told us it was over, that the hotel clip was the end. But what actually happened in that courtroom was something no one was prepared for. Chrissy thing. I was in love with Camron dead. Wasn't a leak, this wasn't reality TV, and Chrissy pulled the pin herself. There were no cameras, no script, no second takes, just the unvarnished, messy truth of the courtroom. What happened next included 2 more clips, a voicemail and a sealed email thread in which Chrissy begs Mona Scott to remove the footage. But it's too late because the truth isn't just out tits plain in 4K. And believe me, what she confessed next altered everything you believed to be true. Rewind to that courtroom, back to the moment Chrissy stood up, hands shaking, mascara-smudged lips, and smudged mascara. Miss Lampkin, under oath. The judge had just asked her a straightforward question. Miss Lampkin, is there anything else you wish to disclose before we proceed with the evidence? No one, not even her own lawyer, expected her to say anything, but Chrissy adjusted the microphone, cleared her throat, turned to face Jim, and made a confession so shocking and raw that it left half the room stunned. It wasn't just an emotional mistake. It wasn't a hookup or a fling. I was in a relationship with Camron. He didn't say a word, just sat there as if someone had disconnected the man completely. 1 minute he was Jim Jones, the Harlem kingpin, the Dipset legend, the devoted ride or die, and the next he was just a guy in a courtroom getting cooked by the woman he built a whole brand around. You could hear the court clerk even. This was the kind of relationship that involved late-night voicemails, burner phones, and deleting those texts. And she said it as if she was done hiding, as if the guilt had already consumed everything else. At 9:13 p.m., Chrissy, in a hoodie, sneaked into the Moran Hotel. Reggie opened the door, put on wine glasses, listened to slow music, and talked about suffocating in someone else's life. It appeared as though she saw a ghost, and Camron was sitting 2 rows in her with sunglasses indoors, his head tilted slightly as if he knew this moment was coming. Perhaps he did, because perhaps this was the plan all along. Let's not pretend this happened suddenly. What made the internet go crazy wasn't the images, but rather Chrissy's voice saying, "Jim still thinks I met my cousin. He's..." Fast forward to today, and we find out that it wasn't even Reggie, but Camron. Let that sink in. Cam, Jim's ex-depot brother, his former friend, the man who once toasted at their engagement dinner. And Chrissy just sat there on the stand, telling the world she was with him. The courtroom didn't explode. Froze. Ad. It froze Mama Jones. Security had she grabbed both of her arms and yelled, "Wildeed, you snake, you snake, you ruined my son Chrissy." She didn't flinch. She didn't even cry. And she looked tired, not sad, not sorry, just done. She told the judge that she was ready to present her own evidence, including screenshots, travel logs, and pictures from burner phones, to prove that everything Cam had already leaked was only the surface. She called it the unfinished truth, as if this was a story she was finally ready to tell. However, things took a turn for the worse when Jim's lawyer, who had remained silent the entire time, got up and leaned toward the "let's talk about brand sabotage." This wasn't just a cheating scandal. It was a business implosion, because the entire Jim and Chrissy machine wasn't built on love. It was monetized through VH1 specials, spin-offs, brand deals, podcast cameos, merch, and wedding rumors that sold out interviews like tickets, and now it's all falling apart. Your Honor, admission is new admission. We'd like to file an immediate motion for fraud, emotional abuse, and brand sabotage. It's fake because the woman Jim called his day one was whispering secrets to his rival in front of the camera while testifying in court. So how did we get here? According to insiders, it didn't begin with Reggie. It began with resentment. Word is that Chrissy felt marginalized and told producers, "I'm not here to be his accessory. I'm building mine." At that point, Cam returned to the scene, whether you think it was comfort, retaliation, or simply jealousy. Chrissy's relationship with Camron wasn't a one-time resurgence. According to court documents, she allegedly met Cam in private on 8 different occasions over the course of 2 years, including hotel check-ins, private flights, unregistered dinner reservations, and that USB. That was just clip 1. But Cam's legal team claims to have 2 more videos and a recorded voicemail in which Chrissy calls Mona Scott directly and says, "Cam can't know, he'll use it. Please just make sure the footage is wiped." Oh, and don't forget, Cam leaked. That's why you're probably wondering, where's Jim in all this? He hasn't spoken in public, but inside the courtroom, his silence was loud. Witnesses claim that his hands were shaking beneath the table, that his lawyer gave him a stress ball, and that he never once looked at Chrissy during her entire testimony. How could he have done that? This isn't just betrayal. It's surgical heartbreak. Discovering that your worst enemy turned into your girl's safe haven and that the man you once toured with held secrets she wouldn't even share footage. Have more dated .age, and it's dated Cameron's lawyer vs. T-Rays. His voice, he didn't need to. But those 7 words were enough to flip the courtroom energy like a breaker switch. Hold on. Just as Chrissy's testimony was coming to an end, the judge asked if anyone else had anything to submit before recess. Surprise! Cameron's lawyer stood up, holding a brown folder and footage. Have more footage, and it's dated. Blink. She didn't blink, but calmly said, "Submit it to the clerk." The judge opened the folder and took out a USB, and Chrissy looked different. Her blank stare cracked slightly, her lip twitched, and her eyes dropped to the floor as if she already knew what was in that envelope, because perhaps she remembered what she said on that tape. However, you could hear the tension tightening in his throat. The bailiff moved like he was walking a bomb to the bench. And perhaps he was, because everyone knew this wasn't just a sideshow anymore. Teamson said, "I want this played now." No. Delays. Jim's lawyer nodded, but Chrissy's lawyer was frantically whispering in her ear. She simply shook her head. "A-OK.ID. No, it's okay. Let it play." The screen was pulled down, the projector turned on. And then there was silence, static, and Chrissy in a studio trailer sitting with someone off camera. Tired, honest, and clear-headed. "I know Jim is loyal," she says, "but libridum doesn't fix boredom. If I feel something in leaks. Now if this, folks, I'm out off camera." The other voice says, "It's Smith.ND, Andy girl, TH girl, your play in fire.fire. You know, cam him.tes him if yokot. Cite, it's not just a scandal.war. Single quotes as war, Chrissy. Sips drink. Drink, then sit.s. It the line that burned a hole through the corti already got caught once. I talked my way out, but next time I won't lie." It wasn't over though, because the judge turned to face her and asked Manon, "Are you speaking in this footage?" She nodded once. "Yes, sir." And he repeated, "And this is from Ann Love and Hip Hop Trail Set, on set unedited." "Yes," she replied, this time without hesitation. The judge then turned to VH1's attorney, who acknowledged that they were in the room now, sweating, scribbling, and whispering into phones. Why was this footage not submitted in the original subpoena request? The attorney for VH1 stammered, "We weren't aware it existed. Instead, it was recorded by a crew member off schedule. It wasn't logged into our system." The judge raised an eyebrow, but it's clear that Ms. Lannon and Ms. Smith are talking about the possible consequences of asterisk. Then came the real kicker. Cam's lawyer stood up once more. He said, "This is a voicemail dated 2 weeks before that footage sent by Ms. Lampkin to Ms. Scott Young." A file was played, and Chrissy's voice again panikedly whispered, "Mona, I told you that if Jim finds out that the entire season is ruined, Cam can't know either. He'll use it. I need you to handle that room footage. Reggie swore it was wiped. You promised." The courtroom went silent. A man in the gallery literally got up and yelled, "She used Mona like a fixer." The judge slammed the gavel. Order in the court. It took 3 minutes to calm everyone down, and once they did, the damage was done. This wasn't just about cheating anymore. It was a cover-up, a production manipulation, and an attempt to destroy evidence during an ongoing legal matter. VH1's lawyer appeared to be watching his career flash before his eyes, and then Jim stood up. No one anticipated it, and his lawyer tried to stop him, but he dismissed him. He looked directly at Chrissy, and everyone held their breath before he walked forward 3 steps and asked her softly, "Was any of it real?" The question hung in the air like smoke, and Chrissy's lips parted. She blinked, then looked down. "Dward. T, say silence waste that, silence Lou, slap dot," then a slap. Jim nodded once before turning to. Jim took a seat at the table and sat down when his lawyer whispered something in his ear. He didn't flinch or react, but then he pulled out a document and handed it to his lawyer. The lawyer stood up and sauntered. "Your Honor, Mr. Jones would like to submit a countersigner sue Miss Lampkin for distress, intent deception, and brand fraud." The judge looked shocked. "Ask her, you're filing now." The lawyer said yes today. However, the courtroom wasn't finished with its twists as the judge was about to take a break for recess. Chrissy's lawyer jumped up and said, "This is outside the scope of this case." The judge wasn't having it. Now that the courtroom was confused, a clerk entered with a sealed envelope. "From Homeland Security," he said quietly. The judge opened it, read it silently, and looked it up, face dead serious. "This court has been informed that Ms. Lampkin is also being investigated for obstruction in connection with an ongoing charity fraud case tied to the footage mentioned in previous hearings. However, we will deal with this chaos." Mona Scott's team appeared to be prepared to disappear into thin air, and VH1's representative began gathering documents as if they were going to be subpoenaed themselves. Cam, however, simply grinned, because this was not about Jim anymore. Rather, it was the slow-motion explosion of a whole brand, one confession at a time. As the judge rose and recessed the court, Cam's attorney handed over one last item. A text log from a burner phone registered. "To Reggie, if the clip drops, she'll deny it, but I'm done protecting her. Let Cam have it. Let 'em all burn." She wrote in the final text on the page, "If the clip drops, she deny it. But I'm done protecting her." People didn't leave the courtroom during recess. Instead, they paced, whispered, and stared at Chrissy as if she were a reality show villain who came out of the screen and into real life. Jim Jones didn't look at anyone, not even Mama Jones, who sat behind him, clutching a tissue as if it were the last thing she would do. However, Cam didn't blink, shift, or speak. The judge returned, set down his papers, and wasted no time in reviewing the final item submitted. The text log recovered from a burner phone associated with a person named Reggie. He read the page slowly, and she said, "If the clip drops, she, Don Yates, but I'm done protecting, let Cam have it. Let them all burn." Then came the second message, saying that he knew his name would be the last one on screen and that the credits were about to roll. One Chrissy believed would remain buried forever. "She used me to make Jim envious." She claimed that Dipset was done and that she wanted to feel powerful for once. Instead, Cam treated her like a queen. "And I was just the cover." A woman in the second row actually covered her mouth with both hands. Mama Jones broke again, whispering, "Oh my God." Chrissy did not cry or act in any way, and the judge looked directly at her. "Manon, are you aware of these messages?" She nodded once. She paused, closed her eyes, and then whispered, "No." At that point, Jim's attorney reappeared. "With your consent, we would also like to present a contract that was signed by Mr. Jones and Miss Lannon, and that outlined their co-ownership of their upcoming Netflix documentary series. The contract contained exclusivity conditions, emotional representation, terms, and brand equity clauses that we now believe were broken." The courtroom was silent because if the judge skimmed the contract and asked, "Ms. Lampkin, were you involved with Mr. Giles and Mr. Camron during the planning and promotion of this series?" Chrissy took a deep breath before responding, "Yes, I was, and I knew if Jim found out." There it was, no moromers, RS no more footage, age no more theories. That contract was real, and if Chrissy broke it during the recording of a show that was supposed to be about their forever love, this wasn't just emotional warfare, it was legal sabotage. She lied on tape in court, and to a man who once stated, "Chrissy saved my life." The affair with Camron began before the series was proposed, before the trailer, and before the reunion special. When she sobbed about wanting to grow together, Jim did stand direct. React. He just whispered, "I knew it." The judge called for a 5-minute break, but for VH1, he left without saying anything to anyone in particular. There was no publicist, no security, just a guy leaving the remains of a life he believed to be genuine. Within minutes of Chrissy's complete disclosure to the media, sponsors began removing emails and screenshots from producer group chats that had been published online. One of the messages said, "Mona's ghosting everyone. I think she's done." Another said, "We're looking at class action lawsuits if this footage goes live." A former VH1 editor then published the shocking post. Writing anonymously, "You don't realize this wasn't just a show. This was contrived anguish." They made Jim the SARS Chrissy confession hashtag received 7 million views by nightfall. Clips of her testimony were shared on TikTok, accompanied by depressing music, glitchy edits, and captions like "She wanted fame. He wanted forever." Cam went live that same evening wearing a black hoodie with minimal lighting and said, "I told you she wasn't built for him." He then logged off, and the clip received 3 views. 2 million views in less than a press release. Mona Scott finally spoke up after an hour. She said, "I was unaware of Miss Lampkin's actions behind the scenes, and I am cooperating with all legal investigations moving forward." However, no one took her seriously because at that point, producers, assistants, and interns were crawling out of the woodwork, spilling emails and revealing deleted scenes. One scene in particular was a cut clip from the Netflix series where Jim asks Chrissy, point blank, "Do you still love me?" Response more than anything now. Fans are claiming that she looked left after saying it as if she was looking for a clue that it wasn't real. Even worse, the episode's editor acknowledged that they omitted the next line, saying that Chrissy paused and whispered off camera, "I hope that's enough for now." That one sentence changed everything. Suddenly, the love story that characterized VH1's Ride or Die branding was nothing more than a skillfully edited lie. Jim has reportedly gone entirely offline, according to a statement from his team, saying he's not giving the night after the verdict. Chrissy posted a quiet Instagram story with a black background and white text that read, "You can love someone and still break them." The internet didn't having it. Comments filled in saying, "Delete this. Jim deserved better. Cam use.you let him and Cam." He's reportedly signed a distribution deal for a docuseries called The Footage They Tried to Bury. He's focused on healing, therapy, and protecting what's left of his peace. Shot Chrissy's face frozen in mid-sentence. "If this gets out, Jim's going to leave me." Cam's voice cuts to black, and I learn that the trailer ends. The full series premieres next month, and VH1 is silent because the world heard the confession, not the court. Now, no one is watching the show. Instead, they're watching fall out. The only question that remains is whether this was ever real. Because in the end, no reality TV show can script this kind of heartbreak. And no producer can save you from receipts. The story is over, the brand is dead, and the truth is out. Forever, forever.